I'm Anthony Stone, born and raised in Green Bay. Went to high school at Schwaben High School.
Really?
Yeah, so local to the area, I guess.
All your life? Whole life?
Till I was 19.
Okay.
Then I moved to Tokyo. Lived there until I was 26.
You gotta elaborate that one, baby. You got to. I did not know that. I did not know that. Go ahead, man. Go down the line, bro.
Well, okay, so 19, right? I was working at the skate shop called Zoomies in the mall, you know what I mean?
Here?
Yeah, here. And I was kind of just like sitting with my roommate one day and I was like, man, is this it? You know what I mean? So I was like, so I'm half Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
So I hit up my mom. I was like, hey, do you think I can move to Japan? And she said, okay. So I moved to Japan. Didn't speak any Japanese.
Really?
Nothing. And then I lived with my grandparents for a couple months. And then I got a job teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, by the end of that year, I think I had applied for fashion school, and that was that. So
you were there for what? 8, 7?
6 years.
You left when you were 20.
Yep, 20. Left when I was 26.
Okay.
So I moved there when I was 19. Left when I was 26. Came back to the States for maybe like a year and a half. That's when me and you first met.
Mm-hmm.
Moved back to
you
Japan.
were fresh.
Yeah.
Fresh coming back.
Yeah.
Word.
And then after that, I moved back to Japan. Lived there for about 6 months again. It might have been a year. And then
That's wild. So you literally like went for 8 years, 6 years.
6 years.
Came back when you were like 26.
Yep.
And then you just like stayed. You just kind of like floated around here for a little bit.
Yeah. So I ended up. I did like a couple job interviews at this place in Minneapolis called the Guthrie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a theater. So I wanted to work for their costume department.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we don't really have anything right now. Got a job at this master tailor shop.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think I worked there for. Might have been like a year. But he basically, because I knew how to like obviously do like the fashion design stuff, pattern making and sewing, but alterations and repairs was like a different world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I learned with him, and then moved back to Japan, to Tokyo. There was a skate shop there that I wanted to work at, so I worked at that skate shop for a little bit. I got hit back up by the Guthrie while I was living there. And then they're like, hey, we got this open position. You want to come back? So I flew back, worked for there. And then I was there for 2 weeks. And then COVID.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you're just like, back home.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was basically it. It was like, well, so we were obviously stuck in quarantine for a bit, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like.
You weren't allowed to leave, of course.
Yeah. So my brother lives in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So the original plan was I was going to stay with him for a month, get settled in Minneapolis while I was working at the Guthrie, and then move into my own place and kind of do that thing. But because of the pandemic, I was just stuck, and I was like, I can't do anything, right? Mm-hmm. Finally came back to Green Bay, got a job at the Hobby Lobby for like a little bit.
Dude, whatever makes money.
Right. And then, because it was like when things were starting to slowly open back up, right? I talked to Rudy, and I was like, hey, man, you got anything? He's like, man, it's still super dead here. Mm-hmm. Don't really have anything. So I was like, all right. Got the job at the Hobby Lobby. Mm-hmm. Emily was moving in here. Man.
Was she in that building?
She was in that building.
Okay.
She was moving in here. And then she was like, oh, yeah, they got like a space upstairs. And that's how that happened. And then, so I think like maybe a month or two after that, that's when Emily was like, hey, why don't you come check it out,
Dude, that's sick though. Yeah. It's like to have those kind of friends that like care about what you do and know that you're good at it. So it's like,
for sure.
All right, cool.
I mean, 100%. If it wasn't for them downstairs, I would be doing this somewhere else. Yeah, like they convinced me. They're like, yo, like we need creative people doing something here, and that like sold me. I was like, oh, that makes sense, like instead of going to like New York where it's saturated or like.
Dude, I bet you're a one of a kind here.
There's people doing it, but it's just not the same,
Not enough passion and love. That's all it is.
But
Why did you start tailoring, or why do you tailor?
I first was just really into clothes, you know, and like that's as far back as I can remember, you know, like being a kid, I started skateboarding when I was 7, you know, and being a skateboarder, it's like all about your style, right?
Yes.
Even before that, when I was a kid, I'd watch movies like Indiana Jones or whatever, and then dress up like those characters, or like dress up like ninjas, and like, you know what I mean? Like it was always like trying to change how you dress to be what you want to be, right? And then so when I was like 18, I started reading GQ a lot. And like that's all suits and tailoring and that kind of thing, really, like really sartorial type of dressing. And so I was like, oh, maybe I want to be a tailor, you know, because I didn't understand, you know, like I was like, you know, especially coming from here, you're like fashion design or like making clothes or like in that regard is like it's like a foreign concept, right? You're like, it doesn't exist here, right? So I was like, well, you know, I know about like tailoring to some degree because, you know, there's like local tailor shops around, right? But you know, obviously all that's going on in my mind, but I'm also moving to Japan to kind of like familiarize myself with my heritage, you know? So like moving to Japan, super into clothing. And then like you go to Tokyo and it's like a different world when it comes to fashion. It's like
world inside its own world.
Yeah, you know, and so it like blew my mind basically, you know?
As it should.
And then so because it blew my mind, and you know, my mom really wanted me to go to school, you know, and I was really reluctant. She's like, well, check out this fashion school. And so I did. And obviously that's focused more on like designing and making. There's like a lot of holes in the education where I was like,
of course.
You know, and also like during this time I was really becoming more conscious about like a sustainable approach, right?
Yeah. Because you want to do it forever. You don't want to just do it for a while.
Yeah, and also just like the actual like the physical act of creating something, you know, and like having a like environmental consciousness about what you're doing in that regard.
Yeah.
So I finished school. I got a job as a pattern cutter. Working for like Tokyo Fashion Week and doing all that stuff. And it was just like crazy wasteful. Like it was just like you would make things and then like just rolls of like fabric tossed, like just crazy.
Trash.
Yep, it was pretty crazy. So, you know, so that kind of like reestablished the fact that I wanted to focus on something, doing something a little bit more sustainable. And like I still wanted, I didn't understand like, you know, how to fit a particular person's posture, you know, a garment to a person's posture, or, you know, there was like all these gaps, or like how to work on a pre-existing garment. Like I knew how to make a garment from nothing, but I didn't know like, okay, well, once it's done, how do you change it? And there's all these kind of things that I learned.
Ins and outs.
Yeah, so that's when I started to like look at being a tailor versus like a fashion designer or
the more technical, physical part of what actually makes a fashion design.
Right. So yeah, that's how that happened.
What would you say makes you feel more like a tailor? Yes, I know it's the technical parts, but like, what truly makes you feel good about what you're doing?
I mean, what makes me feel good is when, you know, someone's wearing a garment that you made, right? Or someone's wearing something that you either repaired for them or made fit their body better, and you're out and you see them wear it and you're like
damn,
yeah,
I did that.
Yeah, you know?
What would you say was the most pivotal moment in your life as a tailor?
That's a tough question, huh? I wouldn't say like anything's been super, it hasn't felt like any one thing has been really pivotal or changed anything, mostly because to me everything's been a pretty methodical plan, you know, where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do, I'm going to do this, do that. I think maybe one of the bigger things was, when I was finishing school, it was like, I want to be a pattern cutter. I got that job and I was working like 80 plus hours a week.
Ooh.
So it was Monday through Saturday. I'd get there at 7:30 and I would leave at 11:30 at night. So it was just like nuts, you know, and then Sunday would come around when you have your day off and I'd just be burnt, you know, just toast, you know, so I'd lay in bed and be like, So I was like, this is not what I want to do. So maybe that was a big thing because that's what brought me back to the States.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably still be living in Japan if that didn't happen, you know. And then I probably wouldn't have done like the whole tailoring thing. It would have been more just like fashion design and pattern cutting and that kind of thing. So,
what would you say, or what's like, you know, the most struggling part about being a tailor?
I mean, I would say there's a lot of different things that are struggle. For me personally, I think I struggle with like wanting to create my own things, pursue my own ideas, but then also, you know, we live in a commercial world where you have to monetize the things that you do.
You have to please the customer.
Exactly. And so finding that balance, especially when like I'm really influenced by designers who kind of ignore that completely. You know, Comme des Garçons, who's Rei Kawakubo. She's a Japanese designer, you know, and she does a lot of like these avant-garde things, and I really admire that work, where it pushes the boundaries of what people think is acceptable with clothing. And you know, you're like, oh man, it would be really cool to do that, but then also it's like you're kind of always being pushed back towards, well, is this serving a purpose? Is this serving people? You know.
True.
I mean, I guess it is because it's intellectually stimulating, but is it, you know, I think...
You don't want to be selfish.
Yeah.
But it's like in your heart, you really want to be.
Yeah, so there's always like a balance, and that's like the struggle there, so... Yeah.
And that's the beauty about our skills. It's like there needs to be a balance of it all.
Yeah, for sure.
You wanted to forever, wouldn't work that way.
Right,
So it's like you kind of have to please people to get what you want.
Definitely that balance is the toughest.
But there'll be a point in your life where you become really fucking good. You don't have to like, you know, take a yay or no from anyone. You
Hopefully.
do what you please.
That's like the dream, right?
Yes.
That's the dream, right?
For any of us. That's definitely the end goal for sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's no end goal. Maybe the end goal is just to continuously pass it down to other people. Let it keep going on. It's like, I don't know, that's probably the greatest thing to do is to inspire others for sure. Too.
Right.
Where would you say you want to take this skill, this place, in the next like 5 years? Like anything planned, what you want to do?
Yeah. I'd say probably like, I don't know if it's possible in 5 years, but I'm hoping to
Speak it into existence.
Yeah, right, exactly, right? I'm hoping that like I can create a space that has a few other people working with me, people who are like me, you know,
Extra hands.
Yeah, like, you know, where we can all work independently and stuff like that. So I'm super inspired by the tattoo shop below. And so it's like they're independent artists working under the same building, right? And they all have their own clientele, offering something slightly different but in the same world, you know? And I think it would be really cool to have that with the clothing aspect, you know, because everyone's style is a little bit different, you know, my personal tastes differ, you know, I'm not doing dresses all the time, I'm not super into dresses, you know.
Very diverse.
Yeah, so like, it'd be cool to have someone who's like, I really like doing gowns, I really like doing this, I like that, you know, and having like a creative space in that regard. And then also, I hope eventually to have like it would be really cool to have a garment manufacturing facility here, you know, provide jobs in the community, you know.
Oh, you really talking now.
Yeah.
I love that, man.
You know, and then also creating something made here at a quality, you know, especially in today's world where like quality and even just like workers, I want to say like, you know, you look at like the stuff going on in Bangladesh or like all that kind of like, or stuff made in China where it's almost like
undervalued kind of.
Yeah, I mean it's like next level to slave labor, you know.
Oh, it is slave labor.
Yeah,
it's just,
you know, because
different times,
different vocabulary to describe it, but it would be rad to have clothing made here, people making proper wages, and a high quality product, you know.
Or dude, even if you could like change it from within, like whether you can like let other countries see that, oh hey, maybe we should pay these people more and not work them to death, and like, they're struggling to make ends meet.
Well, I mean that's my thing is I think to change it from within is like that's what I'm thinking is to do it here, you know, like to be like, we can make it here, we can pay people properly and provide a product that people want to buy, you know, and they're willing to spend the money knowing that it was made ethically and,
fuck yeah,
you know, yeah.
And that's definitely, and I don't want to even keep using the word end goal, but that's definitely something on the bucket list that, you know, all of us want to achieve, like whether it's in any skill for sure.